Thanks, John.
Well, thank you very much for the time. I'm excited to be here. Rahul, Diana, thank you for allowing me to participate in this session. So I'll quickly introduce myself, and then, like Rahul said, we'll go through the intelligent automation at scale guidance, how to structure your program and make sure that it is really set up for success. So again, I'm Chris Colwell. I run our customer success organization and program here at UiPath for our America's enterprise customers. Been with UiPath for over 3 years, and prior to joining, I was actually a customer myself. So I was with a large financial services organization, and back in 2016, I established their intelligent automation program, and then started in one business unit and then scaled that out to 5 other business units. And it was a very successful and impactful program for the business. And I came over here to UiPath to ensure that our customers could leverage my experience, but also that I could help customers avoid road bumps and roadblocks, I would say, along the way. So with that, let's dive in and talk about intelligent automation at scale. So really, when you think about automation, and notice, I'm not specifically talking about RPA. Like RPA, robotic process automation, is simply one part of an intelligent automation program. When we talk about intelligent automation, we're thinking about how do we actually change the way that we do business? How do we infuse automation into the way we get things done, or enable our business to do things that it couldn't do with people, or couldn't do as fast, as efficiently, or as successfully with human capital? So really, before any program starts, it's important to understand what is the reason we're even starting an automation program? What are those reasons? And do we have alignment back to business imperatives, business priorities, and objectives, all the way to the top of the organization? Then it's about ensuring that as we build a pipeline of ideas and opportunities where we're going to apply automation, that pipeline aligns back to those reasons we started the program for in the first place. So if we started the program to get products to market faster, every idea in that pipeline should be impactful and make a material impact in terms of the speed to get those products to market faster, right? And then it's about the right program governance and execution. So how does an organization make sure that before they go and start automating something, that they have buy-in from all the business leaders within the business unit and scope of that process to ensure that they agree upon the value and impact? And how do we make sure that we are building quality solutions and putting them out there into production? And then it's about value realization and the right accounting. So some customers, they're focused on building a lot of automations, getting them out there, but then when it comes to actually equating value to the overall program and even down to the individual processes, again, it goes back to number 3, maybe the right governance and alignment was not put in place. So it becomes difficult to report back to other stakeholders across the enterprise in terms of what value has been generated. So making sure there's a really robust program around tracking value over time so that we can make increased investments in the program and continue to make an impact is critical. And then last but not least, and the reason I put this on the bottom and kind of spanning all these other 4 is right communications and change management. Like I said in the very beginning, intelligent automation isn't just a tool in a toolbox and just let's find what we can automate and call it a win. It's about really changing the way that we do business. And as a result of that, we're going to be changing the way that individual contributors and leaders out there in the organization perform their activities and their deliverables day to day. As a result, it's going to really require clear line of sight and expectation setting across the enterprise. And I'm sure, as anyone knows who has been a part of these programs, it's important to set the expectations of what the automations are going to do or not going to do, what kind of quality assurance steps are going to be performed, when stability is going to be established so that folks can move on from doing those activities and stop doing them. And then also just setting expectations around cost, speed to delivery, and all those other aspects that go along with the actual delivery of solutions. So let's go into each of these in a little bit more depth and talk about what good looks like and what are some common signs of misalignment that I see out there in our customer base and that I even experienced firsthand when I was a customer. So First and foremost, it's really important to ground ourselves in the fact that automation is a means to an end. Automation is not the goal. And I know you're looking and saying, hey, this is the person from UiPath saying that automation is not the goal. But the reason is we are really bringing in automation to solve a problem within your organizations. So what is that problem we're trying to solve? If we can't articulate that, I've seen programs really hit a lot of hurdles and find kind of struggles to even have a sense of purpose and be able to articulate a sense of purpose and impact up at the executive level in the organization. The best practices are really that existing business goals that exist in your organization, right? They're out there in your organization, and those strategies should provide the automation program the focus. That is your baseline. So if your organization is trying to cut costs by 20%, if it's trying to get new products to market, if it's trying to, be the premier company in a certain segment, those are goals that already exist. And I'm sure there's other initiatives in flight to get your organization there. How do we attach automation to those in-flight initiatives and make sure that we are getting there as quickly as possible? It's going to take business leaders driving the automation program, not just IT. Really, the whole pipeline of opportunities, there are business leaders and teams and process owners that own those processes. It's at their discretion and their real, approval to get those processes automated. And again, if they have goals and objectives they're trying to achieve, it should be clarifying in terms of which processes to automate versus not automate. And last, IT is a required partner supporting delivery. I've seen where customers try to go this solo in IT. I see a lot of pitfalls there because then you end up in this dilemma where IT is trying to sell automation to the business and say, you can automate this, you can automate that. Here's use case ideas. And again, the business already has imperatives and initiatives and strategies in place. So we're kind of starting at the wrong place if we're starting in IT and trying to go sell to the business. At the same time, if the business has ways that they think automation can help in terms of delivery and capabilities, they should have a mechanism and a factory model they can establish with the IT groups so they can deliver quality solutions in a scalable manner, right? IT is more of a shared services. It spans across many different business units. So if you were to start your program in finance, for example, the finance organization probably doesn't have the muscle to go and set up a centralized program that can be leveraged by like marketing and sales and operations and HR. So it's important that we look at how IT can really use what they're good at to help a program scale. The best programs I see have business measures impact of the program against the strategic goals. So again, we understand what the goal is of the business. We understand how the automation program links to those goals, and we're measuring the impact of the automation program against that. And you have business and IT partnership like I described. Signs of a misalignment or a program that's going to hit a lot of struggles if it hasn't already is where the goal is very vague and hard to measure. So for example, the goal is digital transformation. This ends up in the bucket of just trying to saying, hey, we have a technology and let's just try to go push it wherever we think there's a fit. Where the measure is the number of processes to automate. Again, if you've automated one process or 100 processes, it doesn't really make any difference, right? What have those processes, what have those solutions actually done for the business? What could you go talk to your CFO about, your CIO about, your CEO about in terms of impact? They're not going to care about the number of processes deployed. They're going to care about what did that do for our business and for our employees and for our customers. And then lastly, the program lead defining locally optimized goals and measures. So the COE lead or the person managing the RPA program should not be the person setting the goals for the program. This again, automation is a enterprise-wide capability. That's not a tool in the toolbox. So when you're talking about enterprise-wide capabilities, what are those goals across the enterprise that we attach to? Because ultimately the funding for this program and the realized value is going to be in the business. So they should be defining the goals that they want to achieve because they're going to be the ones that realize the value. So the reason I spend a lot of time on this slide is because if this is not established, the program will have a very difficult, if not impossible time getting to enterprise scale. It's about alignment to business goals and strategies. The next, once you have that established, the rest becomes a lot clearer, because once you have the ultimate top line business goals, and maybe you have one for each different business unit, right? You have HR is looking to reduce attrition rate by some percent or improve employee sat by some percent. Sales is looking to increase revenue. Maybe, the CFO and the finance department is looking to reduce costs. Each business unit is probably going to, and their leaders are going to have different goals. And that's what drives the pipelines. Each business unit should have its own pipeline of opportunities that's being driven from the top down from the business, in addition to bottom up. So the pipeline opportunities are assessed against those goals, and that's what enters and ends up at the top of the stack. You're enforcing governance. So when you bring a process in or an idea in and you're assessing whether this is a good fit, it's not just about feasibility of can it be automated. It's about how much value in comparison to the top line goals. And that's what should determine how high up on the stack it is in terms of what gets delivered next. As far as how you go build this pipeline, it's going to take both manual effort as well as technology. It's going to take business analysts working with business leaders to identify the top line goals and what processes already exist and have in-flight initiatives, and building a pipeline that way. It's going to take the business team members, like individual contributors out in the organization, as well as your citizen developers submitting ideas. And it's going to take technology. So there are technologies that exist in the UiPath platform, for example, process mining, where you attach to the back end of a system, it looks through the logs, and it can identify what are the common paths that your associates are taking, the volumes, and it can actually help present automation opportunities that are quantifiable and valued because of the data that's exposed there. Additionally, there's parts of the platform like task mining, where you actually deploy an agent that sits on a person's laptop, and the associate can activate that agent, and it will start to monitor what that person is doing on their machine, the process they're performing, and then it will report back along with assembled data from all the other associates, maybe within that persona or organization, and give you a nice dashboard showing you, again, a data-driven view of where good opportunities are. So this all has to work in combination. I would say that the best programs have those top opportunities, like I described in the beginning. They're material against the business strategy. You have a full-time discovery team. You have a set of folks that are literally going and performing the identification of processes with business leadership. They're building the business case. They're putting them in the pipeline tool, like Automation Hub. And then you have the discovery technologies, like I described, producing those additional data-driven opportunities. And then crowdsourcing, roadshows, and building awareness in that citizen developer pipeline. The signs of misalignment I see, and the most common thing I really see in our customer base, is customers not having any full-time business analysts, not working with their C-suite and executive leadership in the business. So what is the option that the automation program has? All they can do is market the technology. And it becomes really hard, because if you go out to all your individual contributors in the organization and you're like, hey, this is our technology, this is what it can do, you can automate this, this, and this, and these are the patterns. Through that crowdsourcing effort, you can probably get a lot of ideas. They're probably not going to be the biggest ideas. And the reason is individual contributors may only see 5 steps of a 100-step process. They're not seeing what happens upstream. They're not seeing what happens downstream. And the ideas they submit are going to be small in terms of steps and in terms of value. So what you actually have built is a pipeline of tasks, not processes. And they're going to set a precedent of this program delivers small value solutions. And that becomes a challenge for a lot of customers if they don't have the investment to go and the alignment to go do the top-down discovery in addition to the crowdsourcing. That crowdsourcing attempt, finding those task automations, that's great for setting up a citizen developer program, because then you give folks the tool to go solve those bottlenecks themselves. But if you're looking to save, hundreds of thousands of dollars or, tens of thousands of hours per process, it's not going to be a productive way to get there, because the biggest processes cross different personas, roles, and even organizations. The next step is to really design the organization to fit the objective. The reason we start with what is the business outcome and objective we're aiming for, then you can start to assemble, okay, if we know the goal is, for example, to save the company $100 million or offset $100 million worth of hiring and expense, maybe we're we're adjusting our organization to be able to handle, the capacity increase we're going to need. If we know we're going after a goal that big, it's going to be worth spending a few $1,000,000 to set up a successful program and staff it the right way. But if there is no goal, it becomes very hard to justify resources at all, or any full-time people working on a program. If there is no business value we're trying to shoot for, how can we go justify the expense for this program? But when we do understand what those goals are, you're aligning the team structure and size to be able to hit the goal. The good programs have pipeline opportunities sitting in those pipelines for no longer than 3 months. If you have ideas sitting in the pipeline for 6 to 12 months, maybe even longer, this program will it will be treated like just another IT program, and folks will become uninspired and stop submitting ideas or start thinking that this program has too big of a bottleneck in terms of delivery capacity, and they're going to take their problems elsewhere and try to solve them with other paths that may not be as great as they could be with automation. Additionally, the best programs have dedicated production support folks, right? So whether, when I was a customer, I had a pod of full-time folks that did nothing but BAU. They tested solutions before we would do platform upgrades, or if we were changing any systems that the automations were touching, they would make sure those automations worked against the new versions of the systems. They would also make business change requests, so small modifications to the requirements and code for some of these automations. And then lastly, if anything went awry and there was a production issue, these were the folks that would jump on it. And the reason why this is so important to talk about, if you're setting up a program and you don't have this, what's going to happen is the folks that are building all the new solutions are going to get disrupted. They're going to get disrupted because they're going to have to jump over and support the processes that are in production. And then your timelines are going to slip on your new delivery. That perpetuates the problem we've talked about earlier about moving things out of the pipeline quickly. And again, you start to build a brand with your business stakeholders that you cannot deliver these solutions quickly. And then additionally, and one of the most important aspects to think about when you're setting up a program and an enterprise-wide capability is how do you scale? And one of those key elements is to think about, okay, if I have a new business unit come to the table tomorrow, let's say the chief marketing officer comes in and says, hey, I have heard from my peers that automation is doing amazing things in finance or operations or HR. I want to embrace automation in my business unit, and I want your team to help us get there. You should be able to roll on resources, people, right, within a matter of weeks to get moving within a new business unit. But you cannot do that if you're only leveraging internal staff in your organization and the program. The best programs I have seen leverage implementation partners, consultants to come in and help supplement their internal teams. So when I was a customer, I worked with an implementation partner, onshore, offshore, and whenever new business units would come to me and want to stand up their version of the program, or whenever the pipeline was starting to get too sizable to deliver within a rapid period of time, I would call my implementation partner. I'd say, I need another pod of developers and testers. And they would be able to onboard those folks within a few weeks because they have a bench of certified UiPath developers that they can leverage. If you're trying to do that internally, it's going to take months to get those folks trained and producing really good quality solutions. And additionally, you'll have the challenges of retaining them. These are highly sought after resources, and there are a lot of organizations out there that will pay them very handsomely to attract them over to their organizations. And I've experienced that firsthand as well. So all those points I wanted to make, as well as just some cautions. And I touched on this, opportunities languishing in the pipeline. That is a way to just build the brand that you do not want for your program, and to build doubt within your business stakeholders that you desperately need to make sure this program is successful. And then all internal resources, it doesn't give you the agility to scale. So you're going to hit a bottleneck. You're going to have business units you're not able to get to, processes you're not able to automate, and folks will seek other paths to solve their problems. I want to take you on a little bit of a journey. I know we've talked about a lot of concepts. We talked about big business goals. How do we align that to building pipeline for your program? Once we understand the goals we're trying to achieve and how big the opportunity is, then you start to understand, like, how do I need to resource this? How do I need to design my COE? I think a lot of organizations in the past used to just jump to like forming the COE before they knew any of the other stuff. Now, in 2022, these intelligent automation programs have been around for 5+ years, right? Like I started my program back in 2016. So we didn't know any better, but there is a proven model that works and that we've seen with thousands of customers now. And if you think about just this chart right here as a representation of all the processes across your organization, this is probably the distribution that would be, similar to your organization, in that you would be able to find a lot of automations on the right. If you're looking at it, where we have a lot of automations that are small in value. And then we have fewer automations that are very high in value, but they are extremely complex. So the ones on the right, maybe just, 5 steps, a couple different systems. The ones on the very left may cross a dozen different systems and be 100+ or hundreds of steps. Where do you start? That becomes the key. There's pros and cons of each. You start on the right with the super small automations for quick wins. Now you have it, you built something and you delivered to production, you've proven the platform works, but you are not showcasing any value to your business stakeholders. You're not going to give them confidence you could deliver millions of dollars of savings if you're automating something that saves 5 hours a week. At the same time, if you do something on the very left where we're going after an extremely complex process, but you're just setting up your program and you haven't really gone through the full life cycle yet, and you haven't, really given your folks, whether those are consultants or internal, associates, you haven't given them the experience yet of going through your SDLC, that poses a lot of risk. Those processes on the very left could take a long time to deliver. They could take 6 months plus to deliver, because you're learning while you're trying to deliver something extremely complex with a lot of moving parts. So the best place from our perspective is to start right in the middle. So establish your centralized COE, centralized delivery program, to address the lower complexity departmental solution. So stay in one department, one business unit. Find that kind of balance where it's like high value enough to showcase, but can be delivered within weeks, not months. And deliver that and keep draining that pipeline within that business unit at that level of complexity. That's where you start. It gives you the perfect balance of, again, value and complexity, and gets you like running your factory in a consistent way within one business unit. So you're limiting your exposure and risk. The next step, once you've mastered that in one business unit, is to go and take that formula and rinse and repeat in another business unit. So spin off a department level federated delivery to manage the backlog and pipeline of another department. This is very similar to what I did. I started in investment operations. I went after, my processes in there, started getting a factory running, built reporting structures and cadences with the investment operations leadership. So they knew what was coming in terms of automation solutions. They knew about the value. We had our developers running our cycles. We were able to now predict the sizing and timing of these deliveries. And then when we went into our customer care, when we went into finance, when we went into HR, we had a formula, we had a playbook. And then when they were asking, how long does it take to build a solution? How much does it cost? What is your production support model? We had all the answers. It was the same exact formula. It's just different processes touching different systems, and we're working with different people. And that's how we start to think about these pods, kind of federating out the delivery. Then it's about going after that long tail. So all those small processes across the organization that aren't going to be, high ROI. You wouldn't want to put your most expensive full-time developers on. These are great opportunities to set up a citizen developer program and allow these folks who are seeing these problems firsthand, and they may be problems just specific to one person or one small team, give them the tools to solve the problem themselves. If you don't, those problems will persist. People will get frustrated. They will stop submitting ideas. And additionally, we've seen it all in our organizations, something called shadow IT, where people start picking up other tools and building other solutions that nobody knows about. It could be something as simple as an Excel macro, and then your organization goes through a big Microsoft upgrade, and suddenly these macros that were invisible to leadership are breaking all over the place, and there's business impacts. The great thing about the UiPath and the intelligent automation approach to citizen development is you can monitor and govern these solutions, and you can make sure if someone on a team built something very valuable to them, they have a mechanism to share it, right? To share it out to many different people within the organization so they don't have to rebuild that, which is great. And last but not least, so if we follow these steps, we did one department, medium complexity, we scale that to multiple departments, we have citizen development now. By this point in time, your factory is running. You have a good sense of how to deliver these solutions, and you have the experience to go after the most complex processes in the enterprise. And as you federated out all these other pods going after the different business units, the best practice is to maintain still a central pod that can handle the most complex processes from across the enterprise. And this would be your most experienced group of folks that maybe you started the program with and have the most cycles. So that's kind of a journey through. If you think about what does this all look like, Chris, in terms of my org structure, the investment I need to make in resources, I'm going to be very bold here because I've lived this. This is the minimum viable program structure if you want to start a enterprise automation program. And these are all full-time roles. You need someone full-time who's accountable for the program and is leading. That's your COE lead. Very common, very, very common across our customer base. I was the COE lead at my last employer. You then have dedicated business analysts. These are full-time people who are going out, meeting with process owners, business leaders, continuous improvement, operational excellence teams. And they're not just finding the processes, they're finding them, they're assessing them, they're building the business case, like in terms of how much value it's going to deliver to the business. They're getting sign-off from business process owners that, like, yes, this is going to produce X amount of value. And then they are building the requirements documents, like the PDDs, the process design documents that are required for the developers to know what steps these automations should perform. Without a couple of these folks working on building that pipeline, there is extreme risk to not having a high value pipeline. And there is also going to be a bottleneck when it comes to requirements documents and making sure that this factory is running, like I said. Having a project manager is critical because, and I would say this is probably the only role in here that you could start with a half-time or some kind of partial capacity in terms of resourcing. I started with a 50% allocation from our enterprise project management office for a project manager. And he came in and he helped oversee all of our deliveries. So we were building multiple processes in parallel at a time. And he was able to track the timelines, make sure we're raising any risks to timelines or going over budget, or even just dashboarding for some of our steering committee meetings with leadership from the other business units. So it's important to have someone that's looking at the big picture delivery of the whole program. It's very hard for the COE lead to play that role, like monitoring each delivery, multiple deliveries in parallel, while at the same time managing this whole team and making sure that the metrics are getting to the right people. Then it's having a solution architect, making sure that every process we build, we have standard code design rules. We are governing the build. In other words, nothing goes to production until it passes a review with our design committee, with the solution architect, and also the solution architect keeping line of sight to all the other systems in our environment that are changing that may pose a risk to anything in production or anything that's currently being implemented. And then starting out with a couple delivery pods. I put dev/test. I mean, I kind of was fungible in how I set up the role, in that it could be a developer, it could be a tester. Everybody has the same capabilities, same type of experience, but you don't want someone testing their own code. You definitely want a separate set of eyes on it. And the way that I've recommended is that you have at least one of these folks in a pod internal. They are the ones that are kind of the glue for the whole solution that's being built. And you can dole out portions of the process to get built by other folks within the pod, and it speeds up delivery and it creates a more robust test cycle. I see that typically it's best to leverage a partner, an implementation partner, like I mentioned, to help scale this. You could scale that offshore, onshore, depends on your price point, the governance restrictions that your organization has. I personally had offshore developers with my implementation partner, and that's how we operated, was in a design similar to this. The reason I say start with 2 is because once you hit any kind of delay in one process, if you're just doing one process at a time, your program is going to crawl. You need to have multiple paths to success. So if that first process you pick, there ends up being something you didn't expect in terms of SME availability, some system constraint, or some surprise along the way, if you're developing one process at a time, your whole program's on pause. Nothing's going to happen. Now you have a pipeline building up and ideas flowing in and everybody's excited, and you're stuck because an SME is unexpectedly out of the office for 2 weeks, right? So you need to have multiple paths to get solutions into production. And then finally, the run support pod, which I talked about, having someone who can jump on production support issues, handle business change requests, a product owner who's looking at the overall platform, making sure we're logging things correctly, making sure we're setting up, for example, new virtual machines. We have enough licenses, we're scheduling our automations the right way, we're communicating with the business on any changes coming up or upgrades on the platform. And this is the starting point, like this is minimum viable day one. As you scale across multiple business units, you're going to have more business analysts. Ideally, you have a business analyst for every single business unit. I didn't even have to open recs for these folks. I just went back up to my business unit leaders and I said, could you loan me someone? Can we do a rotation program for a business analyst in intelligent automation for 6 months? They report to me for 6 months. I'll train them on how to do the job for the first month. And then they are just building pipeline for your business unit. And then after the 6 months, if I can justify a full headcount, if I can get budget for that, these folks are a shoo-in, they apply if they want to do that, and they've done a great job. And if not, they rotate back into the business and they're infusing that knowledge and perspective back into their peer organizations. As you have more business analysts, more business units, so more pipeline, you'll need to scale up your number of pods. So you'll need to call up your implementation partner and make sure that additional resources are getting allocated. You could charge each of these pods back to a business unit. Doesn't need to all come from IT's budget. Every organization is different in terms of how they do budgeting. What we did is we started in investment operations and that leader funded it in the beginning. And then as we went into more business units, we started cross-charging, and then finally getting to more predicted, budgets for longer term. So we didn't have to go process by process. And then as more solutions end up in production, you need to scale up your support pod as well. And then as you go after that long tail citizen developer opportunities, it's not about just sending a tool out there and saying, hey, everybody, here's the tool, here's some online training, good luck. It's about really managing it like a program. It's about making sure that we're informing, educating folks out in the organization of what this is, how to use it, what training to take, what steps do you have to go through to get this agent, this tool deployed to your machine. It's about monitoring what people are doing and looking for patterns where, hey, this person built this solution and is getting a lot of value on the tax team. Shouldn't everyone in the tax team have that solution available to them? And then it's about having availability for questions. So having regular office hours for these folks to ask questions. And I see that a lot of citizen developer programs are not just 5-10 people, they're hundreds of people in your organization who can build these solutions and solve their own bottlenecks. And at the same time, they're upskilling. And what we've noticed is that a lot of early career hires right out of college are expecting this type of capability and technology to be available to them. We're actually noticing that a lot of universities are embedding, especially RPA solution development right into their curriculum. And I'm not talking about just computer science majors, I'm talking about finance majors, actually learning how to build RPA solutions while in school. So this is something I think that is just going to be even more critical as we go forward. And then, after you have your organization built and I really think of the COE as like the factory, they just build everything the business is driving. It's about making sure that we have a good reporting structure to inform our business leaders, sponsors, those folks investing in the program of what value has been realized, and that we're achieving what we set out to achieve when we set up this program. So it's about measuring against that business value. It's about being able to roll up different reports and inform various parties of value. So having dashboards, standard email reports, steering committees, doing quarterly program assessments to assess the operating model and make sure that we are operating at our desired rate so that we can expand and hit all the business units and be able to scale how the business needs us to. And then it's about knowing for each business unit, like after you go automate this work, what happens next? How do you realize that value? Does it mean you removed one headcount out of the hiring forecast? So now we don't have to go hire another person from the market because we automated so much that we've absorbed that capacity, that volume of work. Is it about, now a group of folks on a team, 50% of their day is freed up. So we need to reorganize the team and what they're doing and consolidate some activities and do a little bit of an operating model design effort. But really it's up to each business unit and business leader to figure out what do they do with the savings or impact. And what I see in terms of misalignments, and I kind of alluded to this in the beginning, it's the automation team tracking the number of automations delivered, or going and asking the business sponsor who funded the program, hey, what difference has automation made for your business? And they can't articulate it. They just say, hey, we've automated a lot of stuff. So again, it's just being very deliberate and kind of thinking about this as you start the program, being able to report on it as you are delivering solutions. And last but not least, automation, like I said in the very beginning, is business change. This is not just, I like to think of intelligent automation programs, they're not as much technology programs as they are business transformation programs that leverage technology. And the program branding and communication to all stakeholders is so important. I have battle scars from just, the robot experience a scenario that we didn't design into the process. And then a business stakeholder said, the robot broke this, or the robot broke that. And what happened was we didn't really align expectations correctly with our business SMEs and inform them of kind of the different periods of testing that we would go through and how we need to be extremely, holistic in terms of how we think about all the scenarios and exception paths. So again, it all goes back to communication and making sure all your stakeholders are informed and having a feedback loop and having predictability. So if we think that a simple automation could be delivered in 4 to 6 weeks, let's make sure it could be delivered in 4 to 6 weeks. And if it's not able to be delivered that fast, like how do we raise up those risks, proactively with our business stakeholders and give them some rationale so they don't program in their mind that, hey, these solutions are going to take a lot longer than what the program leads are telling us. And I think it goes without saying, and I probably hit on these points already a bit, but the business is going to expect that automation works flawlessly on day one if you don't educate them otherwise. They need to understand there's kind of a hypercare period where it's like, okay, this is the first time the automation is touching production systems and the data might be a little different than we tested on. And if there's a pop-up that was not there in a lower environment where we were building the solution, that's gonna cause us to have to stop the automation and decide what we need the process to do, right? They're always going to expect the automation to adjust to changes in the environment like people do. And the reality is most of the solutions, depending on the technology being used, you have to kind of think again holistically about what could happen and how do we design for a backup plan if there's a sudden change in the environment, right? So if you're relying on automation to go to a third-party website to fetch some data, what happens if that website's down? What happens if it's super slow, backlogged one day? Like, is there a second path you want that automation to take? Do you want the automation to actually just send an email to the business stakeholders, letting them know what the issue is that got encountered? Like, think about what are those things we can keep the business informed on so they're part of the solution instead of having to raise tickets all the time. And then the business is not planning what to do with the freed up capacity. That is a big gap I see where we go and save tens or hundreds of thousands of hours in a business unit, and the leader will come back and say, yeah, it's great, but I don't know what we did with all that time. And it goes back to good governance and aligning on that with the business leader in the very beginning. So when I started my program back in 2016 and I was talking to our investment operations leader, he specifically told me, he said, hey, I want you to go work with the business management office. And every time you automate X number of hours, which equals one full-time employee, one FTE, anytime you hit that threshold of one FTE within my business unit, I want you to go back to the business management office and have them remove one FTE out of our hiring forecast for the next fiscal year. So he had a plan. Like there was never any question to this because we already had the formula we had to follow for value realization with him and his business unit. So that brings us to the conclusion of this presentation. I want to thank you again for sitting through it all, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any out there right now.
Great. This is great. Thanks, Chris, for walking us through this. So yeah, at this point, we'll ask if there's any questions. Please feel free to unmute yourself or put it on the Zoom chat.
Hello, Chris. This is just Jose. We're from Stride. I have my partner Casey here. We're on the same team. So I missed the first part of it, but I'm sorry if it's already covered. We started our program around 3 years ago, and so we had a huge a huge amount of opportunities, large number of opportunities our way. That was a voluntary basis. Like we're saying, hey, we're starting an automation program. These are the things that we can do. Let us know if you have something, and then we receive plenty of them, and we're kind of done with them now. So we're beginning to feel that lack of opportunities in our pipeline. Now, I would imagine now we need a little better way than just volunteering to go after them, because people probably are finished all the things on top of their head, right? So what is the best approach?
This is and welcome. I actually was just talking about your program with Jason Morrison from my team this morning. So great to put a name with the program. I did cover this a bit in that what you described is more the crowdsourcing, right? You have a technology, you have a new solution path, and you know what patterns would be able to produce solutions. And now you are basically selling to the business and saying, hey, give us your ideas. And what I was saying earlier is that the flaw in that approach is that you are going to be soliciting most of your ideas from individual contributors, and they may only see 5 steps of a 50-step process. They're just doing what's in scope of their role. They're not looking all the steps before or after their set of steps. So it's going to be very hard to find big, impactful, high ROI opportunities with that model. Additionally, all these people have day jobs. They all have other things to do. So it's going to be at their discretion when they feel like submitting an idea to you. And that ends up being a big bottleneck for a lot of our customers. The best practice, while the crowdsource model is great to find citizen developer opportunities, the best practice is to also have some full-time business analysts. I would assign one per business unit that is full-time responsible for building pipeline within that business unit. They are going and speaking to those business leaders in that department. They are talking to process owners. They are tracking where are the continuous improvement and process optimization and projects in those business units. And they are finding the big, impactful end-to-end automation opportunities in kind of a top-down fashion from the business side. Additionally, pair that manual effort from the business analysts along with process mining, task mining, use data-driven approaches, because that technology is out there. Use data-driven approaches to also identify opportunities from the back end through the logs or through the front end by having an agent sit on an employee's desktop. Like I've seen a customer that had a large contact center. They deployed these agents to a select group of their contact center agents. And when they would take a customer call, they'd activate the agent and they would go perform all the steps. You pull all the data together and you're like, oh, across this sample set of contact center agents, they're all performing these 20 steps, and it shows volumes and how much time on each step, et cetera, and you start to build a bigger business case across the number of associates in that role. So that's kind of my perspective of what makes a really good pipeline. The pipeline is really part of a discovery program. So like staff, it has to be a program. Discovery is a program, finding the processes, working back with the business, what's important to them. Otherwise, it's going to be this frustrating journey of you're trying to pitch technology to people, and really we should be trying to solve business problems that already exist.
Yeah, makes sense. I think, I just would like to further maybe decorate a little bit what I mentioned earlier. So it was crowdsourced, of course, but none of those opportunities came in the way they were so big. We had to do a little bit of what you just explained. We had to go there, figure out, go beyond the borders of the described process, figure out the large scheme of things, and then have somebody sit with the people. But again, they were done from a context of that opportunity, not necessarily from a department or yeah.
So it was more, you took the idea and you worked it up and down and crawled and tried to make it sizable. And the question I always, ask folks, like after going down that approach, let's say that I don't know what department that process was in, but if let's say it was in finance, does the CFO like what would the CFO say about you automating that process? Does it make a tangible impact? Does it align to any of the strategies the business is trying to execute right now? And that becomes the key question of that may be something we can automate, but does it matter? Does it matter to the business that you automated that? And that's a harder question to answer if you don't have the first ingredient of a successful program, which is what are the goals that each of the business units are trying to achieve, irrespective of automation.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, but it doesn't happen overnight. I get it, and just I would be happy to talk to you offline more about this, and we can maybe map out with our CSM team. How do we help you provide
we're working with Nathan.
Yeah, perfect.
Nathan, that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, great, awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anything? Okay, this is great, Chris. Thanks. That very insightful. I think me as a customer also. I think this is a good context, and to see how we take it to the next step where we are. We're also in a similar 3 years kind of into the program, and then what next? Do we need to take a step back? And we had a lot of opportunities in the automation hub. A lot of ideas came in, and then how do we scale it? How do we find the right size and the right people and right use cases? I think this is a good information from a customer standpoint. Thanks for sharing it and joining us today, Chris.
No, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. And I ran my program for 3 years, and there's a lot of things I would do differently, and a lot of it's baked into this presentation of sometimes to move forward, you got to step back and reset a little bit in terms of some aspects. If you really want to make this an enterprise-wide capability for your organization, make it a strategic capability for your organization. So, and I would encourage anyone who's not attending our Forward 5 conference in person next week to watch some of the keynote recordings that'll be made available after on our website.
Great, thank you. Dan, any closing comments from you?
No, just great presentation today, and appreciate you joining, and everybody on the call. Thank you for taking your time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.